fish friends, it's Raina. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. I've got my kitty tree here. Today I want to talk about the one thing that is killing my business and why it is so important for you as mermaids to diversify your income so you don't get stuck in a bubble. Right here after the break. Okay, fish fans, I have had my Halifax Mermaid business for close to, I want to say 11 or 12 years now that it's been a registered incorporation. And prior to that, I worked on my own and I would sometimes work with other mermaids. It's been about 14 years. So when I incorporated Halifax Mermaids, my main point of focus in terms of the services I was going to offer were mostly pool birthday parties, a little bit of public events sprinkled in, some education work, getting into schools, getting into daycares and things like that. And as we evolved, certain things we got really good with and other things we kind of pulled back because we realized, okay, we don't really make a lot of money doing this. It's kind of hard to sustain it, or it's difficult, for instance, if I'm working a day job to go do gigs that are in the middle of the week at school. It means taking time off from one place to do the other. So we've been kind of, tweaking things as we go, figuring things out. And one of the things I started to do early on in my business was diversify my income. And when we talk about diversifying your income in this sort of field, this is really essential to people who do things that are gig-based. You don't want to have everything based on the gigs because things happen that are outside of your control where you're suddenly not getting gigs and then you don't have income. We saw this happen with the COVID-19 pandemic. Everything was shut down and we weren't allowed to do gigs and the pools weren't open and we weren't allowed to have groups of people. So how did my business survive that? Well, I diversified my income. In my example, for Halifax Mermaids, we have one income stream that comes from gigs. I also license stock photography, so photos that Sean and I have taken over the years have appeared on book covers. Actually, the woman who wrote Aquamarine licensed our photo eventually for use on one of her books, which was really cool. And we've seen some of our images licensed in children's books and magazines and things like that. Some people may want to take that a step further and license their video footage that they're using. It's got to be good, but you can license it through programs like Storyblocks and Getty Images. They also do video and stuff. That's really cool too. Really important to just make sure that you know that when you're doing that, that your stuff can be used in ways that maybe you don't like. So don't be licensing things that could reflect on your business. Often you'll see pictures and video of Mermaid Melissa and it has nothing to do with Mermaid Melissa, but they've licensed an image or a video of her because they want content that is mermaid. Doesn't necessarily mean that she's involved in something like that. So something to think of. Another thing that I did was I personally wrote books. I self-published my 3 books, and at the time self-publishing was the way to go. I'm looking at publishing another one that I've been kind of working on pieces and piecemeal, and I think with that one I'm going to bring it to a local publisher and see what they think. They do their accepting every November, so I kind of missed this year, which is fine because I'm a crazy busy mother, but one of those little things that I've just been like, a chapter here, a chapter there, and hopefully I'll have a manuscript by November. But prior to that, I published my 3 books, and self-publishing was really great. So that was another income stream that I had. YouTube is another income stream. So you meet the threshold to be able to monetize, and then there's some income you can get through that. I do my affiliate work with Mertailers. So when you make purchase using my Raina10 code, you get 10% off and I get a 10% commission, which is really cool. Because of Mertailer, I really want to say that my work with Mertailer saved our business during the pandemic, because when we couldn't work and people were getting like stimulus checks and they wanted to go out and buy mermaid tails, they were using my code. I was getting that little bump. We were able to pay our insurance. We were able to pay our hosting fees. We were able to afford the different costs directly because of the income that came from that. So that is really cool. And I just want to say thank you to everyone and anyone who uses my code in the past, present, and future. You're helping a girl out. And plus you're getting a discount, so why wouldn't you? Another way that I diversify my income was I've done Patreon for a number of years, and that is a cool way to connect with your fans. And we're now seeing that competitors are popping up. So some mermaids are doing OnlyFans, and it's not necessarily adult content on OnlyFans. OnlyFans was started as like a Patreon competitor, so there actually are a lot of people that use OnlyFans and it's not adult content. And if you do adult content, that's none of my business. Just caution you not to mix that with working with kids because it creates a conflict of interest there. So I'll just leave you with that. That's a whole other video. People are also seeing competitiveness now with YouTube offering memberships and Instagram offering memberships. So those are other ways that you can kind of diversify your income and get some passive income. Merchandise is another way. Now the markup on merchandise is not great. You usually make a couple of bucks on something, but if you have a big enough fan base, this is another way that you can diversify your income. But okay, here we go. What is killing my business right now? And this is a lesson I want you to take from me and take it to you, and maybe you'll have some ideas for me, and maybe I'll have some ideas for you. My city recently, because I'm Canadian, and we have pools that are very seasonal. The outdoor pools are only open maybe 2 months a year. They're not profitable because of our weather and our seasonal aspect of it all, okay? During the pandemic, when all the pools were closed, they lost a significant amount of money, the indoor pools and the outdoor pools. We mostly have indoor pools. The government has always subsidized the pools. It's the only way to make them work in Canada. We just don't have the same population as the United States. We don't have the same weather as the United States. So without that subsidy, it's really hard to make pools affordable to people. So our first big hit came when the pandemic closed the pools and they lost so much money. The second big hit is our government changed from, I guess, like if you want to compare it, it would be like Dems to Republicans, basically. So locally it changed from liberal to PC, and the PC is more conservative, and they're really big with the slashy on the budget for like everything. So tourism, you know, and the people who are hiring us with money from the government are having their money cut. But the pools had their funding slashed. And they have to figure out that operating cost, and if the government's not subsidizing it, that gets passed off onto the community. And it's really unfortunate, not just because it affects my business, but because we literally know, there are so many studies on this, that when the government invests in recreation, it just does so many positive things for the community. Obesity rates go down, crime rates go down, drug use go down, mental health improves, hospital visits go down, because it's not just investing in fun, it's investing in healthy lifestyle, it's investing in resources for people, it's investing in entertainment. When you support recreation, it is really just this whole circle of well-being that is so good for people. So it's now become less accessible to people. Pool prices have gone up absolutely dramatically. Prior to this, you could rent some pools for $75 an hour, and an expensive pool would be $250 an hour. Now, the cheapest is $300 and some odd dollars an hour, all the way up to $550 an hour. An hour in the pool, and that's it. Not only is it so incredibly expensive, but the memberships have had to go way up. And because it's not really cost effective for them to have pool rentals, they're not making as much space available for pool rentals either. So here's the thing. My client base has been largely dependent on parties. And what happens when people can't afford those parties? They can't afford the pool rental, $500 to rent a pool, and then I start at $350 an hour, so that's like it'd probably be close to like $275 USD. So they're paying like $500 for the pool, $350 for a mermaid, and then presents for their kid, and food and decorations. It's like $1,000 birthday party. Yeah, I get the odd client who can afford it, and thank you for booking me for those things, but most can't. So in the winter, in the off season, I was usually doing like 3 or 4 gigs in a weekend, and I had this major team. So I've got like, okay, group A is at this gig, group B is at this gig, I'm at this gig. We had an empire going. Right before COVID hit, we were doubling in size because we could not keep up with the demand for the pool parties. It was crazy. And when you look at that kind of factor, and then you also factor in that, so yes, all these expensive, lack of availability of the pool, but then this is my business, and at the end of the day, I am the one who has to keep it going. I've had a surgery, I've had a child. It's really difficult for me to keep up this level of energy that is required for this. So this one change, and I've had my business for, if you want to lump it all together, close to 15 years, and this one change has just completely pulled the rug out from underneath me, and it's not something we ever anticipated happening because we have pools, they're everywhere. So the kind of bookings that I'm getting right now are very seasonal. They're people's home pools, which are only open for 2 months of the year. They're recreational based, like when I do Bedford Days and Canada Days, and that's not pool based, that's me in the tank, and that's very dependent on the tank availability and the budget that the city gets from the government and the municipality to put on those events. One way that we are still getting into pools is that a lot of rural communities that aren't as dramatically impacted by this are booking us for spring break and Christmas and things like that. So we're going in, we're doing a few hour shifts, so I might do 2 hours with a couple of merfolk, and then another bunch of merfolk are going to come in and do another 2 hours, and that's just open to the community or to the members or whatever. But they can be really difficult too, because when we're doing pool parties, we manage like a ratio of 1 to 10 mermaids, or that can be really difficult too, because when we're doing pool parties, we're managing a ratio of 1 mermaid to 10 kids, roughly around that, so that we don't get too overwhelmed, things don't get dangerous. But when we're in these big giant things, it's like we need 4 mermaids because we have 200 kids or something, and it's still crazy, right? So it's nice to be able to do that. The other thing is that the merfolk in my life that have worked for me over the years, some are retired, they're moved on, they're having families of their own, they're moving provinces, they're changing jobs, they're just not in a place where they have the availability that they used to. And so I'm sort of at this crossroads of like, okay, do I hire more people, but then I can't rent pools to train them, and I'd have to start from scratch because Nova Scotia does not have a mermaid population like the rest of the world. So I really have to like rent people my gear, teach them everything from the ground up, try to get them into a PADI course maybe, that kind of thing. That's a lot of investment. Do I go hard on the advertising? Do I just start targeting these world things? And then we kind of get into the factor of like, all right, what about childcare for my son? Is my son going to come to all of these gigs? Can I pay a babysitter? Can I find somebody who can watch him so that I can do these things? It's very falls on my shoulders because it's my company, it's my husband and I trying to do this, and at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to make sure the bills get paid, right? You know, everybody else is a subcontractor. So that is kind of the thing I'm facing right now. And I just had this amazing workshop with YouTube, which I'll do a different video about. I got a lot of great ideas on how to expand my YouTube, but I also got some suggestions on how I could find some funding in order to rent pools so that at least I can be making some content from that. So this is a time in my life where I'm really thankful, again, just like the COVID pandemic, I'm really thankful that I have all these income streams. And the thing is you may not see a big lump sum of money of one of these income streams, but when you have all these multiple things, they can bear the weight when you're going through these rough times where you're not getting gigs or something. So I just cannot stress enough how for your own longevity and your own peace of mind, it really helps to have all of these different things. In terms of Halifax Mermaids, I am really not sure what the future holds. I'm not even sure if we want to stay in Halifax because the local economy is just really bad. We have the highest taxes out of the entire country, which is making it really difficult. Lack of childcare, as you know, it took me 2 years to get childcare. Lack of healthcare. Sean and I thankfully have an absolutely amazing GP, but there is a list for people who do not have doctors, and it's 120,000 people. Like that, like it's 10%, it's more than 10% of our entire population. It's wild. So this could be a whole other rant, but really all these conditions are just making it so difficult, and the government won't change for at least another year, I think, unless something radical happens. And even if they do change, there's nothing to say they might put the funding back, and this could be a waiting game of waiting a year or two. But this one thing is killing my business, and I never anticipated it. And it's wild because we cope with it through the COVID pandemic. We were able to cope with it. But now that was different. It wasn't that people couldn't afford it. It was that the pools were just closed, you know? Now really people can't afford it. So where is my market if people can't afford things anymore? And, you know, our expenses have gone up. Our insurance has gone up. Our insurance company that we had got bought out and we had to go with a new one, and it's almost double the price of what we were paying. All the hosting fees have gone up. Our costumes and things, some of them have stayed the same price, but the US Canadian dollar gap has gotten bigger, so it's actually still costing us more. So there's a lot of factors that I have to think about. I'm going to document that as I go, but the one thing I know for sure is I'm always going to be a mermaid. I'm always going to find a way to do it. I want to be like the Wiki-Watchy mermaids, where I'm 70 years old and still rocking a mermaid tail. And to all the senior merfolk out there, you inspire me constantly. I'm 38, and even just merfolk who are in their 50s, you inspire me constantly, and you are making ways for people to come after you, and I appreciate it, and I want to be one of those people. So this is where I am with my business, and I'm going to look into the funding, and I'm trying to diversify my income more, but I really am just having to recognize that this may become a seasonal thing for me, and maybe that's not the worst thing ever. I just really need to wrap my head around it so that things are balancing out financially, you know? Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. It's a bit of a rant, this one, a little bit longer, but I appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell if you want to get notified. You can join my Facebook group. I've also launched memberships on YouTube. It's going to replace my Patreon, I'm thinking. I'm kind of testing it out. We'll see how it goes, but I do have a Patreon shop where you can buy some of my workshops, my books, all that good stuff. So best wishes, and thank you so much for joining us today.